There's no such thing as sight reading. Last month, October, was the beginning of year 37 of my temporary part-time college kid working for tuition and beer money private music teaching job. I plan to continue until something more stable, lucrative, and interesting comes along. Over that time, I've averaged 100 students a week, 50 weeks a year. I've done somewhere in the neighborhood of 175,000 private music lessons. If any of you know anyone who's done more private music lessons than that, I'd love to meet that person. My students range in ages from 9 to 75. I teach public school kids. I have college music majors. I have professional players as students. Some of my students are band directors, and at least a few of my students are and have been college music professors. And in all of that time, every student and every player I've ever met that has said to me, I'm not a good sight reader, on further inspection, it turned out that they actually just didn't know how to read music. Every sight reading method that I've ever seen has been based on note recognition. Well, note recognition is not reading. If you're learning to read a book, you don't learn to be a better reader through letter recognition. Letter recognition is good, but that's not reading. If you want to read text, you have to learn to spell words. In music, if you want to read music, you have to learn to spell scales and chords. Scales and chords are the words, and they are recognizable by sight, by spelling, and by sound the same way that words are recognizable in a book. So when you read music, if you've learned to spell scales and chords, you have the benefit of the past knowledge and experience. You shift your focus to the rhythm, and pretty quickly you have the benefit of past knowledge and experience in regard to the rhythm too. Pretty quickly, most of the rhythms you see are rhythms that you've already experienced before in some past piece of music. Now, I know, even if you're musically literate, the first time you read a new piece of music, you're going to be slower and more careful than you would be the second time, the 10th time, the 100th time, or the 1000th time. Well, that's true of anything. Anytime you do anything for the first time, unless you're just needlessly reckless, you're going to be more careful the first time. I drove my buddy's Escalade for the first time this past weekend, and I was slower and more careful than I would have been in my normal car, but that doesn't mean I was sight driving the Escalade. Most of the things that I had to do to drive the Escalade, I were the same as any other car. I had the benefit of past knowledge and experience. Music is like that too. When you read a new piece of music, the reason you're slower and more careful the first time is because that's the time that you're reading it. But it's still made up of scales and arpeggios with the same spellings and the same sounds and a lot of rhythms you've already encountered in past music. You have the benefit of past experience, but the first time you read it is the only time you're actually reading it. The second time, of course, is going to be faster. You already read it. You know what's there. By the 10th time, your muscle memory and your technique starts to kick in, and it starts to move much more smoothly. By the 100th time, you have it memorized. You're not reading it at that point. And by the 1000th time, it's completely mastered, and it's completely automatic. You're not reading it the 1000th time. My experience has been in every case, everyone that I've ever met that said, I'm not a good sight reader, once they actually learn how to read music, they didn't even call it sight reading anymore. It's just reading. If you want to learn how to read, you have to learn how to spell. My name's Mark Dooley. I've been a private music teacher for 36 years, focused on practical theory and music literacy. If you'd like to hear more, follow me. If you'd like lessons, contact me. If you can learn how to read words, you can learn how to read music.